Hey guys, so today I want to talk about my Poison Spiral Volley Deadeye. Now, this build is amazing at clear and does some pretty respectable bossing damage as well. Right now, I'm one-shotting every single tier 15 boss. I haven't done any pinnacle bosses yet, but I don't expect that to be too much of an issue either. Now, the concept of this build is very simple. Spiral Volley uses frenzy charges to increase the amount of damage it does. And Deadeye has an ability to make it so that every frenzy charge you use gets doubled. So if you're using 7 frenzy charges, which is the max amount that we have, it counts as you using 14, which makes our damage skyrocket. And this applies to barrage as well, which is what we use for single target in combination with snipe. This build is super fun and clears extremely well. I would say that in terms of clear, maybe this build even rivals that of Lightning Spear, but who are we kidding? That thing is ridiculous. But I think that the clear on this build is definitely very respectable and could be a close second or third in the overall clear aspect of builds right now. Now, one thing I do want to mention is that I did take heavy inspiration from JTX's Bleed Spiral Volley Deadeye, and I would recommend you guys checking out that video if you are interested in the Bleed playstyle. So the reason why I went Poison instead of Bleed is not just because I think Poison is cooler, which I think it is, but I also think that there are some fundamental problems with the Bleed variant of the build that get solved quite well with the Poison variant. So what were the problems that we looked to solve with this build? Well, the first one has to do with being low geared. In the Bleed variant of this build, when you don't have that good of gear, you rely on charge infusion and pinning to generate frenzy charges. Unfortunately, the charge infusion spirit gem got nerfed heavily in Dawn of the Hunt, and as a result, it just feels very clunky to use. And I think that the Poison variant solves this very well. And the second thing that I think this build solves is single target. Now, while the Bleed variant has respectable single target, I do think that the ceiling for single target of this build is definitely higher. And I'll go into detail a little bit later on how this build solved those problems. But let's start by taking a look at the character. So this is Mommy Viper. It's a level 89 Deadeye with 42 strength, 247 dexterity, and 101 intelligence. Survivability wise, it is very squishy. It has 2k life, under 500 energy shield, and it's 72 evasion. Now, of course, we're a Deadeye, so we have Tailwind stacks, which will increase our evasion, but overall, still very squishy. Later on, we'll probably change up our equipment to increase the amount of energy shield that we have to increase our survivability, but for now, we are doing just fine with our current setup in mapping. Now, what makes this build so strong? Well, the way that this build operates, as I mentioned before, is we take advantage of the frenzy charge generation abilities of Deadeye. So right now we are running 7 frenzy charges on our tree. So we have +1 here, +1 here, and +2 here for a total of 7. Now, Deadeye has an innate ability to make it so that you gain frenzy charges up to your maximum at a 30% chance. So anytime you would gain 1 frenzy charge, or 2, or 3, you have a chance to make it so that it just goes up to max instantly. And this happens quite often, and it's very nice. It gives us a lot of frenzy charge generation, but this overall, at the end of the day, powers this right here, Thrilling Chase, which when we consume frenzy charges, it consumes twice as many, skyrocketing the amount of damage that we're doing with our Spiral Arrow and our Snipe. Because if we look at Spiral Arrow, it says right here that there is 30% more damage per frenzy charge consumed. So that is 210% more damage when we're consuming max amount of frenzy charges. And also at its base, 100% more damage if any frenzy charge was consumed. So overall, we are getting 310% more damage. So with 310% multipliers, that's 4x damage basically off of our frenzy charge generation, which is absolutely insane. And then for our single target, we also have Barrage, which consumes frenzy charges and adds additional repeats of our single target skill, which is Snipe, which by itself already does a lot of damage, and we combine it with Barrage with 7 Frenzy charges, that is a buttload of damage. So that is overall how this build works and how we are able to do big damage and why I think that this build is very strong. Now, we're already in here talking about the skills. So let's start off by talking about the bread and butter, which is Spiral Volley. And this is the skill that we use for our clear, and it also generates charges on its own. Now, I will explain how this works. So we have Break Endurance, Corrosion, Splinter, and Armor Explosion on it. Armor Explosion is really just there to help out with clear, and you can use anything that you want here. Maybe you want to use like Ricochet or something. That's another option that I have explored, but I overall like Armor Explosion because it's just nice and explodey, right? It's just feels nice to use. But overall, these are the 3 requirements. So if you don't have these 3, you don't want to use Spiral Volley yet, and you might want to just use like Gas Arrow or something while you're waiting to get the 3 gems. So Break Endurance is going to be the first one, and it is really the driver of this whole charge generation. It gives us a 40% chance to get an endurance charge when the skill fully breaks armor. Now, how are we breaking armor? We are using Corrosion and Splinter. Splinter makes it so that 15% of the physical damage dealt breaks armor, and Corrosion makes it so that 80% of the poison damage breaks armor. Now, this is where I think that this build is way better than the bleed variant. And this is going to be the part where we break armor to generate charges. For the other build, especially when you have low amounts of gear, it's really hard to break armor with Splinter, even if you are using Demolisher, the one that gives 50% more armor break. So that ends up being really tough, and that's why you end up using Charge Infusion at the beginning, which, as I mentioned, just got nerfed and gutted to where it's really clunky. So having the ability to use Corrosion is huge because this actually breaks armor extremely quickly. So this right here is our driver for our charges and allows us to keep it up, and just the skill itself makes up for all the damage that we're missing on the support gems because we're pretty much not running any damage on here. So that is kind of the bread and butter. We just walk into a map, we use our Spiral Volley, we'll get some charges, and then every single time we use our Spiral Volley after that, it'll be super strong and basically one-shot everything. Really amazing clear. Now, for our single target, that is going to be a combination of all 4 of these abilities. Of course, our main single target is going to be like what's coming, like the damage is coming from Snipe. This ability does a lot of damage when you charge it up and perfectly time the Snipe itself. If you don't perfectly time it, it doesn't do much damage because it says right here, when you perfectly time it, it impacts for a guaranteed crit and has a 200% critical damage bonus on it. So that's very nice. But you do have to time it well. But we are running Concentrated Effect to make it so that our arrows are not as spread. We are running Heft for more damage. We are running Window of Opportunity for more damage again, but it is a little bit hard to land the perfect timing on it, but you kind of get used to it. And then Blindside to make it so that we deal more critical damage. The critical hit chance doesn't really matter to us. It's just a critical damage bonus, which we get from monsters that are blinded, which will be blinded by our Rain of Arrows. We have Rain of Arrows. We drop that on the monster before anything happens because we do run blind on it and it blinds the monsters. Now on this one, we run Inhibitor to make sure it doesn't take any charges. We run Conduction and Lightning Infusion so that it has a chance to shock the enemies and again, deal more damage. Now, how we boost our damage from Snipe is with Barrage. So this makes it so that whenever we use the skill, it makes our Snipe shoot more arrows. And when you consume Frenzy charges, it adds even more arrows onto it. And for us, we have 7, so that's a lot more arrows. So we use Perpetual Charge, Premeditation, and Second Wind on this. And we also use Ingenuity on it as well. We have it on Blink right now because honestly, when we're doing map bosses, it really just dies in one hit anyways. I don't need to use this second hit. And if we do, then we use the Second Wind, Second Charge for that. So maybe for like a prolonged fight, you might want to put the Ingenuity over here. But when I'm mapping, I just have it on Blink. And then we have Sniper's Mark to, again, make us do more crit damage against the enemy. So we're using Inspiration and Arcane Tempo. Very simple. When we go up to a boss, we usually just drop our Rain of Arrows. Then we drop our Sniper's Mark on the boss. Then we put on Barrage, and then we hold on to Snipe, and boom, big damage, boss is dead. That's the basic bread and butter of this build. Spiral Volley for AoE, and Snipe for single target. Now, for our Spirit Gems, we are running Wind Dancer for evasion. We have Precision attached to it. We have Herald of Plague to spread the poisons that we're dealing with our Spiral Volley, which a lot of times, you know, if you're hitting an enemy, right, maybe there's like a straggler here or there. Herald of Plague pretty much take care of that straggler. And that's another advantage I'd say this build has over the Bleed variant, which is that, unfortunately, Herald of Blood just doesn't do that much damage. Herald of Plague, on the other hand, does do enough damage to kill monsters on its own. So I like that for this reason as well. And we also use Ghost Dance with Fast Forward to help us with survivability because we do run Energy Shield. We're running Blink right now on our secondary hand setup. So we have Sniper's Mark linked to our secondary hand. So whenever we do want to blink, we just hit Sniper's Mark and then we can blink. And then we can swap back for our damage. So it's really nice. Just gives us a little bit more mobility, helps us to get over terrain and such. I like it. You don't have to use it if you don't want. You can use another thing, like maybe like Withering Presence, or if you have high energy shield, maybe like Convalescence to increase your survivability. All that is something that you can do to make this build a little bit more fit for yourself. So those are the skills. Now, you might be wondering, wait a second. You don't have any poison skills and you're not running Envenom on any of your abilities. How are you actually poisoning the enemies? Well, that comes from two areas. First, we have poison hit chance, or chance to poison, which on our Spiral Volley right now, we have a, let's see right here, I think it's like 60%, like 58% chance to poison on hit, which we get that from our tree a little bit, but also mostly from our equipment, which we'll go into right now. So we are running a Toxic Quiver, which adds a 13% chance to poison on hit with attacks. And of course, that boosts from our tree. That gets boosted from our tree. So that adds poison on hit, but we're also running Snake Bite, which gives us an extra stack of our poisons, but also gives us a 29% chance to poison on hit. I believe this goes up to 30 at max, but ours is at 29. So that's kind of how we're getting our poison stacks for this build and how we're building poisons without actually running a poison ability. Now for our snipe, we have Atsac Sight, which makes us that every time we critically hit an enemy, which is every single time we hit an enemy with snipe, it gets poisoned. So that's why we are always poisoning with our snipe. Now, as I mentioned before, we might change up our gear to get rid of Atsac Sight so we can get an energy shield helmet to allow us to get more survivability. But when we do that, we might end up having to run Envenom on Snipe with a 5 link. So I still kind of need to decide what I want to do with that. But that is kind of how we are poisoning our enemies. And when we talk about Snakebite, the reason why we use this, of course, is mainly because it gives us an extra stack of our poisons. And this is the main reason why I think that the bleed variant is worse than the poison variant when it comes to single target. Because if you look at this, right, for snipe, normally it shoots 1 arrow, and that's totally fine for getting 1 stack of bleed or 1 stack of poison. But when we put barrage on, and this is without any empowerment, it shoots a couple arrows. And with bleed, you can only get 1 stack of bleed. Whereas with poisons, you can use things like Snakebite to get an extra stack. And you could also get it on your tree. So those extra stacks are what allow you to deal more damage than if you were using bleed. On top of that, poison does a 20% magnitude for the ailment that it inflicts, whereas with bleed, it only applies 15. So we go to here, get that, and boom, 15%, right? So you're just overall doing a lot more damage with your poisons. But getting into the rest of our gear, those are our main required gears. The Toxic Quiver, chance to poison. 2, our Snakebite. This is going to be our best in slot glove. Nothing else really does more damage than this. And then 3, this might get replaced at Atsac Sight. But early on, feel free to run this. It's just very nice and gives you the ability to free up one of your snipe slots for more damage. For the rest of it, it's really just damage and survivability, right? For our main bow, you want it to have as much physical damage as possible, which is why we have a good bit of physical damage, but also a good bit of critical damage bonus as well, because this build scales off of crit. The life leech is not required. It is a nice to have though, but mainly for your bow, you want two things. You want physical damage and you want critical damage. Attack speed can be nice as well, but not required. Now for our rings, it's gonna be mostly survivability. I also have more leech on here for mana leech and life leech, because we do so much physical damage. Those help us sustain our resources pretty well. Feel free to not have it, but I do think that having it is really nice because you're pretty much never pressing your potions ever because of that. Armor is just going to be armor, survivability. Belt, more survivability. Boots, more survivability and movement speed. For our necklace, we want we have 2 proj on here, plus 2 proj. Ideally, at the end of the day, we'll have 3 proj, but it's mostly just more survivability and allows us to allocate a node on the tree, which is wasting, which is this one right here. So far, I think this one's going to be the best in slot. Gives you more damage against enemies with ailments, and also makes the ailments last longer, which is overall going to be more damage again at the end of the day. So that's what we have for our gear. For our quivers, what you're going to want to have is, again, toxic quiver, but you want to have physical damage on it, bow damage, projectile speed, and you also want +2 proj on skills. If you could get critical damage as well, that is perfect, but I would say that that is going to be one of your lowest priorities, because the value you get on that is just going to be lower in terms of the number, but also the rest of the stuff does add a little bit more, because you do stack quite a bit of crit damage on this build. So that's going to be what you're going to be prioritizing for your stats and your gear. When it comes to the tree, currently I actually don't have all my ascendancy nodes. We are missing one last ascendancy, which I will probably put into this one right here for point blank, more damage. Feel free to get it into wind ward for more survivability. Either one is going to be completely fine. But overall, the goal of this tree is to, 1, get every single one of the frenzy charge nodes here. So getting all 7 frenzy charges in total. And then also increasing the amount of critical damage that we deal and increasing the amount of poison magnitude that we do. As I mentioned, resonance is a core piece of this as well. So try to get up here as soon as you can for your ability to start doing your spiral volley setup. Early on, when you're leveling, you might not want to do spiral volley. Like, even if you can use spiral volley, it might just be better to do a gas arrow setup until the end game, to where you are dealing a good bit of damage and can upkeep your resonance, your charge stacks. Because this build does kind of rely on your ability to just basically nuke a boss from 100 to 0. So if you're not doing that during the campaign, it can be a little bit tough. So I'd recommend just using a gas arrow setup while leveling, and then when you're able to do it around endgame, swap over to the resonance setup with spiral volley. And then we have our jewels. Now, I pulled up on a little notepad on what you should have for your jewel priorities. So in terms of the amount of damage that the stats add to your build, it's going to go as the follows. So projectile/attack/bow damage is going to be adding the most damage to your build. So you're going to want to prioritize this. Then you're going to want to prioritize crit damage, then poison/ailment magnitude, and then poison/ailment duration is going to be the least impactful out of all of these. That is what you're going to want to prioritize for your jewels. It's going to be very hard to get all 4 of these, so likely it's just going to be the top 2 of these is what you're going to get. Or you can choose poison/ailment magnitude and projectile damage. That's another thing that you can do as well, especially maybe if you're like having a little bit of trouble clearing or things like that when it's not just single target, because critical damage pretty much only just boosts our single target, whereas everything else is useful for clearing as well. You can see right here, I have one of these nodes that has 3 of the 4, but yeah. Oh yeah, also, speaking of this right here, marks, I realized that I forgot to say that we do have a weapon swap for mark. I mentioned earlier we have mark on our second weapon slot, so we can use it to blink, but also because of this, we are actually allowed to use this right here, which makes it so marks have more cast speed, more effect, so it's more effective, and it also makes it so enemies are blinded and can't deal critical hits, which before, as we mentioned, we do run blind side on our snipe, so that will help with that, even though we do have what is it called, we do have blind on this, so it's kind of doubling up, but having both definitely doesn't hurt, right? So that's kind of what we're going right now with our tree and our jewels and everything. Overall, this build is extremely smooth and is definitely my favorite build of the season so far. So I'll probably be playing this build for quite a while, to be honest. I'm going to try to use this to clear every piece of content and also try to build up our economy for our next build. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully you will enjoy this build. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comment section below. But I also stream every single day on twitch.tv/misoxjiru, so you can come by and hang out and ask questions there as well. But until next time, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Hit the sub button if you did, and I'll see y'all on the next one. All right, guys. Peace. I'm hunting for, because maybe there would be if I had seen it, but there's nothing really like off the top of my head that I would say like, oh yeah, I saw this MTX and I really liked it. How many critical chance? I don't run any critical chance. I don't run any crit chance on this build. This is a fairly low tribute map. I hate how there's so many monsters that can run pretty damn fast and slam down you pretty fast, and they still do a shit ton of damage. Goodbye. So good at planning. You shared. I have a couple questions. Are you running this? Are you running supports with Spiral Volley? Or is there something I'm missing? Oh, I need to import that into it here. Give me a second. I didn't import it into it. There. I thought it was in there, but I guess it wasn't. We're doing it live, folks. We're doing it on the fly. Oh, where's my green arrows? Here it is. Ooh. Ooh, that was much better. Ooh, that was much better damage, boys. Woo! That's what I'm talking about. That is the type of damage I've been looking for from this build. Holy. This build looks fun. Yeah, no, it's a good build. It's a lot of fun. It's a good ass time. Yes! Let's fucking go, baby! Tonight's going well, guys. Tonight is going well. Fub Gooner. I gotta be careful. Fub goes gonna steal my build again, guys. Fub might steal my build again. I gotta post this video quick before he steals it.
Fury unleashed.
Oh, fuck, I missed her.
Gathering storm.
Get down, girl. Get your ass on the ground.